Yep, go ahead.
Okay, and we are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Studio Bridge. Tonight is the first of 4 nights with the great Thomas Blackshear. This is a little bit different for us because we were in the same room with each other. I'm out in Colorado Springs visiting Tom where he lives. I was in a studio for a long period of time today, taking pictures of things, and we're ready to go. Here's a great shot of Tom. He looks like a painter, doesn't he? Could be, kind of feels like a Gustav Klimt atmosphere to it. The smock, everything. The beautiful paintings in the background. Before I really get into introducing Tom, we have a little bit of a discussion here. We're going to announce the winner for our landscape painting art challenge, and we had some really nice pieces turned in, and I was with Tom when he made the decision, and I listened to him kind of go back and forth over a few of them. So it was a battle, but the winner is Addison Green. So congratulations, Addison. Really, really beautiful piece. And I think you're from right around here. I think you're out in these parts somewhere, real close. So Addison, congratulations. And thank you everybody who contributed to the challenge. It was really some nice work. We got a really good one for this month, which we've already kind of gone over, and we came up with a great solution last night, which I'll be posting in the next day or two. So Tom's driving from here on out. He's controlling the slide delivery, the images.
Yeah, just like the Outer Limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tom, welcome. Thank you very much for doing this. Really, really appreciate it. I'm really, number one, it's a little bit different being in the same room, and I keep looking to the right because you're just a few feet away from me. And I know your history.
Yes, you do.
I met Tom in 1977, and he was an intern for my father. And maybe you could explain how that happened.
I started working. Well, hello, everybody. I hope I don't bore you to death, but anyway, here we go. I started working at Hallmark Cards, I guess in 1977, and I knew Mark was going to be there doing classes for the employees there, the artists there, and I couldn't wait to get into his class. It took me 3 months before I could even get into the class, but once I finally got into the class, I was so excited because I wanted to see him do his technique, and I knew if I saw it, I knew I could duplicate it. I just believed I could. And so I coaxed him into doing a demonstration for us, because at first he didn't really want to do it, but he said he'd do it. And that day that he did it, man, I was like, I knew I made the right decision to start at Hallmark because Mark was there. And so I went home, and this piece that you're seeing on the screen here, this is called it's called Cowboy. That was the first piece that I had done in his workshop, and then I did another piece after that. And after I did this piece, I brought it in, and Mark, a couple of weeks later, asked me to become his apprentice, which blew me away. I never thought anything like that would happen. So I was with his apprentice for a couple of years, I believe, and but this was the beginning of it. The next painting that I would work on would be this one. It's called Sunhawk, and this was done in his in the class he was teaching. And so I thought that this was probably the better of the two pieces.
So you met my dad in 1977. You just arrived at Hallmark.
Yeah, well, but to be honest with you, I met your dad before I went to Hallmark.
at school?
What happened was he came to visit in Chicago at Jack O'Grady's.
Oh, yeah.
We were in school at the American Academy of Art in Chicago, and a group had heard that Mark English and Bernie Fuchs were in town at Jack O'Grady's. So we got a little group together. It was only about 6 of us, and we went to Jack O'Grady's studio, and we went in there, and it was right a little bit past lunchtime. And we were in there and we asked the secretary, is Mark English and Bernie Fuchs here? And, and she said, no, they're out to lunch, but they'll be back soon. So I said, well, do you mind if we wait? And she said, no. So we were just looking at the gallery at his studio. And then all of a sudden they walked in and they played a joke on us. Mark pretended he was Bernie and Bernie pretended he was Mark. And so we didn't know, we were just so excited to meet them. So he came up and, we were just sitting there gawking at him, Then I asked Mark, I said, well, so what are you doing now? And he said, well, I'm on my way to Kansas City. I'm going to be doing something with Hallmark cards. And all of my friends said, and pointed at me, he's going to Hallmark cards? And Mark said, oh, yeah, you are. I said, yeah, I'll be there. I got recruited by Hallmark cards. He said, okay. He said, I'll tell you what, when you get there, make sure you look me up. So that's what happened.
So the rest is history.
The rest is history.
So maybe a little bit more, maybe your childhood a little bit. What were you like as a kid?
Okay, as a kid, I had an incredible imagination. My father was in the Air Force. He was a pilot. We traveled around quite a bit. I didn't have, we would move from town to town here. So most of the kids that I played with, they didn't play sports or anything. We were, young kids and stuff like that. I think I started out in Plattsburgh, New York. I remember when I was 4, 5, 6 years old. Around 7, I think we moved to New Orleans. And then we were there for about 2 or 3 years. And then after we moved there, we moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And Atlanta, Georgia is where I grew up. Moved into a neighborhood full of kids. First time I lived around a whole bunch of kids, that many kids in a neighborhood. And they were all playing, football, baseball and stuff. I had never played baseball or football because nobody that I was around did anything like that. So I remember how insecure I was because when, they would pick me on the team and my sister was better than I was at baseball. And that was a little embarrassing. I was the guy that when they would pick somebody to play, I would be the last one they would choose, or not choose. Let's just put it like that.
Didn't you tell them you were Batman?
Well, not yet. That was before I was Batman. But anyway, what happened was I would just spend a lot of time by myself and I would just go do my artwork because I knew I could do my artwork and stuff. And so most of the guys on the block that I lived on, they were into, how people were into painting model cars, model planes. Well, these guys were into painting model monsters. So I started doing the model monsters and, I made sure I could paint the model monsters to make them look a lot better than what they were doing. And so I became known as the guy on the street who was the artist, on the street. So I was always doing that kind of stuff. Oh, yeah. And then I also told Mark that I got a secret. During that time, I was Batman. So I was telling her that my mom made me a costume. She sewed the cowl and the cape for me, and I had my sister's turquoise leotards on. Had my mom's long gloves and put those little spikes in them. And then had my little Cub Scout utility belt around my waist and had her little black boots on with the fur at the top. You couldn't tell me nothing, Jack. I was Batman. So
that's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Anyway, so let's move on. So this piece right here we're looking at was one of the first big jobs I had done after I became a freelance illustrator. I think it was my first big job as a freelance illustrator for Budweiser beer. I remember it was during the time that Indiana Jones was a big hit. And they wanted a character, of course, that looked like Indiana Jones. And I told them, I said, I can change it enough where you won't have a problem because it looks so much like Indiana Jones. They said, no, we don't care if we get sued because if we get sued, it's going to make the poster more popular. I mean, it's kind of stupid, But anyway, the truth is they did get sued by George Lucas and he made them take all of the posters out of the market. So it really backfired on them. So, I mean, but it was kind of a stupid choice anyway. Now, this was during the time when I was working at, after I apprenticed with Mark, I took a job at a local advertising agency called God Bold Richter Studios in Kansas City, Missouri. And this is some of the stuff that I was doing as the head illustrator when I was there. This was done in acrylics and gouache. Most of the illustrations I did at that time were done in acrylics and gouache. And this was for Lee Jeans.
Wow.
This was for Budweiser Beer Great Kings of Africa series that they had done. And this was a roommate of mine who posed for me. And after he posed for me for almost 2.5 hours, he got that look on his face, and that was the perfect look I was looking for. So I was really pleased with that, but it sure took a long time for him to get to that point. So guess who this is in this poster? This young man sitting right next to me posed for me right here. When he was, I don't know, how old were you then?
17 or 18.
Really? About 17, yeah. So he's the head guy, the main figure in this.
I just have to compliment you on your drawing skill. I have no idea how you made me look so slender and not as muscular as I was. Unbelievable drawing chops. Now this was, I have to say this, when it was, I know I was 18 because I was on my way to college. I might have been,
Okay.
and when I was 18, when the poster came out,
Okay.
and everybody kept saying something to me. All the older people I lived in a fraternity the first year I went to college, and they kept calling me chief. And I was kept asking, what are you talking about? And they said, you didn't see that poster. Have you seen the poster in the liquor store? Well, I didn't go into the liquor
Well,
store.
how'd they know it was you?
It looks exactly like that.
Okay.
And so that stuck with me my college days. It was pretty funny. Anyway, go on.
Okay, this was after I left Kansas City, Missouri. I moved out to California, San Francisco area. I wanted to get on to do special effects for George Lucas Studios. Had the opportunity to work with Phil Tippett, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make the ball and socket joint foam rubber models for movies and three-dimensional animation. That's what I wanted to do. And Phil Tippett met me, and he told me that there was nothing going on because they had just ended the last in the trilogy of the Star Wars movies. But the next big thing that would come out, he said I would be at the top of the list. And I said, okay, while I'm waiting, I'll start trying to work. I'll do work until you call me in. Well, I started doing movie poster work. And this was the first piece I had done that got me more movie poster work. This was, I was up for doing the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom movie poster. It was 3 people who worked on it. I didn't get to the marquee, but this was what I did. And after I did this, then they started giving me more movie work. Anyway, by the time Phil Tippett finally called me and said, okay, Thomas, we want you in. We want you to come and work with us. I was so swamped with work, I couldn't take the job. And that's the only regret in my career, that I didn't do what I went out to California to do. But anyway, this was a piece I did for the Society of Illustrators of Los Angeles, or Illustration Society in Los Angeles. They wanted me to do their poster for that year. And I called this Spirit of the West. Then I changed the name to Indian Paintbrush. And it was just a poster showing the spirit of the West. And it was the first time I did a painting with gold leaf in it. So, and during the time I was working at God Bold Richter Studios, we had some downtime. And so in our downtime, I would work on different techniques of famous illustrators, trying to learn how to do their technique. Because I didn't think I would ever get known off of my technique, because I thought my technique was kind of boring. So Mark had taught me his technique, being his apprentice. Then, I tried Bob Heindel, I tried Bob Peak, which this is Bob Peak style. And I just learned how to duplicate styles of different illustrators. Now, that didn't mean I did everything they did to get with it, but I got something, hopefully they got close enough to their look. And it got to a point as an illustrator that sometimes I didn't know what style to do. I knew so many different techniques that I would sit down and actually say, okay, whose technique am I going to do today? And
I started poking around Tom's studio this afternoon, and one of the things that was in a hermetically sealed envelope was the Bob Peak step-by-step issue. So it was really worn out. So I looked at it a whole bunch. But that's good.
This is a painting I had done for a low-brow beer. During the time that I did this, there was a commercial on TV about a king in Bavaria or somewhere who had chained a lion to his kegs of beer to protect him in an ice cavern. So they wanted a billboard of that, and this was what I had done for that. This is also gouache and acrylics. This is one of my favorite pieces. I am, or should I say, I go ape over Kong. And so I always wanted to do a painting of King Kong. And so I did this piece right here. And this was, like I said, my main style at the time was a gouache and acrylics.
That was pretty, you did that in Kansas City.
Yeah, I did.
Because I saw the model.
Yeah, yeah. So, wait a minute, did I do this in Kansas? No, I did this in California.
I've seen the model.
Oh, well, no, it's a model, but it's not of this particular pose. Yeah, yeah. And this was one of my favorite pieces that I had done as an illustrator. I did a style that was similar to line decker. And this was one of the more, what I considered to be one of the more successful pieces. This was for a job I had done for the post office. I did a book on all the stamps that had been done on Black Americans. And so I did 24 illustrations for the book. And they also had the sections where you could put stamps in the book next to the particular subject that you did. And 4 of the individual stamps that were in the book, I had done those particular stamps. But like I said, I did the 24 illustrations for the book called I Have a Dream. And these are some of the images that came from that book. And these were all done in different techniques and styles.
And Tom, you've lost all these paintings.
No, not all of them. About 12 of them are missing. I don't know if they've been stolen. I don't know if I just misplaced them somewhere. I just don't know where they are. This right here was a demonstration I did for the class that I teach here in Colorado Springs. This was done quite a few years ago, maybe about 6 years ago. And this technique, I was just showing them something that was similar to kind of like a Bob Peak technique. So this was gouache. These are some more images from I Have a Dream stamp book.
Okay, so what was it like working with the post office? Did you have to work to a specific size? Was it, I've heard a lot of people say different things about doing stamps.
Yeah, what happened was, ever since I was Mark's apprentice, and I saw that he had done about 5 stamps, I said, man, he did stamps. I said, I'd love to do stamps. And then one day I got the opportunity when I became a freelance illustrator. Jerry Pinkney, who's a famous illustrator, called me up and said that he had done the Black Heritage stamp series for the U.S. Postal Service, and he wasn't going to be doing them anymore. And he admired what I was doing and asked me would I be interested in doing stamps. And I said, yeah. And so that's how I started doing stamps. And since that time, I've done over 30-something stamps for the U.S. Postal Service. And so this was one of my favorite stamp series. This was the movie poster stamps that I did years ago. No jest. Oh,
oops,
oh,
sorry.
okay. Well, that's all right. We'll get to them when we get to it. This was an illustration I had done for Budweiser beer. They did something for college campuses, their mascots. Wisconsin Badgers was this one. And so they did a whole calendar, and I did about 4 or 5 illustrations for a college mascot series. And it's, like I said, this was the Wisconsin Badgers.
And is that, what technique was that?
This is acrylics and gouache again.
Looks much more opaque.
Yeah, like I said, that was my main technique, was the acrylics and gouache. This was the first stamp I had done for the U.S. Postal Stamp. This is Jean Baptiste Point de Sabo, the first settler in Chicago. Now, that was also the only stamp that I got through the stamp committee without any fixes.
Your first one.
First one. And then it never happened after that. So here we are with the rest of the movie poster series, Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz. And then I also did Stagecoach. I don't think that's in here though. This is the Mother Teresa stamp that I did. And then these are done in gouache. And you know, these stamps are usually about 7 inches, 7 to 8 inches. This stamp might have been 8 inches high.
The original paintings.
Yeah, the original paintings and stuff. They're not that big. And I do mine mostly in gouache. And here are the the classic monster stamps. The challenge with this, of course, was to do a painting of a stamp of a character that you've always seen in black and white. And so that was really the challenge. And out of the whole series for the monsters, I think the Phantom of the Opera was my favorite.
Which I think you'll hear more about this, but somewhat what you just heard is kind of an outline of what this month's challenge is going to be. It's going to be black and white monsters that you're going to do in color. And obviously it's Halloween this month. Mm-hmm. So it should be really tied in and be part of what Tom's talking about over the next few weeks.
So I had to do the character and the lettering. I hate lettering, but I had to do it for the job. So
did a good job with it.
Thank you. I hate anything with a lot of lines, straight lines and stuff. So Dracula, I think, was my second favorite in the series.
I love this one.
You see that little nodule on that spoke coming out of his neck on his left-hand side?
Right.
See that little round part?
Yeah.
That was a piece of frisket.
I
forgot to peel that off.
So you used, did you frisk it for airbrush or did you frisk it for like watercolor or something?
I did watercolor and did the little airbrush on top of it in the background and a few other areas.
That's funny.
Yeah. And the Wolfman. I like the way his hair came out on this one.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I got a chance I got into the collectible business back in the early 90s, I think. And I started doing collector's plates. I did the first Star Wars collector's plates. Then after I did that, I did the second Wizard of Oz collector's plates. Then I did Wizard of Oz portraits. Then I did Star Trek collector's plates. Then I did Star Trek Next Generation collector's plates.
Here's a question. I'm going to back up a little bit because it's something I should have asked earlier. But when did you discover that there was a world of illustration out there?
Well,
were you in school? Were you?
I was a teenager and I knew I wanted to be an artist. I just didn't know what kind of artist I didn't want to be. Well, I knew I didn't want to be a starving artist. And so when I would see illustrators' works, I really admired them because I liked their skill level. Their skill level to me was a lot bolder and stronger than a lot of fine artists. And so I decided that I didn't want to be a starving artist, so I wanted to be an illustrator because I wanted to make money at it. And that's when I decided I wanted to get into illustration.
So who were the illustrators you were looking at the beginning?
I'll be honest with you. At that time, I really couldn't tell you who they were other than Norman Rockwell. And a few other people. I wouldn't have known their names at the time. But later on, of course, after I got into it, then I found out about, Mark and then Bernie Fuchs and all the top 5 guys or the top 6 guys. I found out about all of them in art school. And
but then you also, Dean Cornwell was a big influence.
Oh man, yeah. When I found out about Dean Cornwell, and the story with Dean Cornwell is I didn't even know who Dean Cornwell was. I I was living in California, San Francisco, and it was probably one of the worst years I've ever had in my life in my career. And there was a store in LA called in Ventura called Carter Saxton. And they were an art store, very famous art store. And they had original Andrew Loomis paintings on the wall of the store. And I used to go in there. I used to love it to go in there and see those paintings, but I would buy all my art supplies from there. Well, I didn't have a lot of money during the time, and it was a really bad time trying to pay rent and everything else, because I was the only one. I got an apartment with two other friends of mine, and the other guy who had a job, after we signed the lease, he pulled out the next week, and I was stuck with everything. So it was a really bad time. Anyway, I walk into Carter Saxton, and I see this book, and it's Dean Cornwell. And I'm like mesmerized. I'm like, whoa. And I'm looking at this guy because his stuff looked like, it reminded me of Frazetta, because I always thought Frazetta's paintings looked like he painted with butter. And that's what Dean Cornwell's work looked like to me. And I was like, oh man. And the book was $30-something. And I still hadn't paid rent. And I said, I gotta get this book. I gotta get this book. And I went and spent my rent money on that book. And I was able to some kind of way to get the money from somebody to borrow or somebody to pay my rent. But I got that book, and I'm telling you, I never looked back, boy. I mean, that book I have to this day, the cover's almost off of it and stuff. I use that book so much, but because I love Dean Cornwell stuff. If I could paint like anybody, it would be to paint like him. Anyway, here's The Wicked Witch from the Wizard of Oz, portrait series. This was the commemorative plate for the Star Wars plate series that I did. And this was the Wizard of Oz plate series here. These were all done in acrylics. And this plate right here won me Plate of the Year in the collectible industry. And this was the commemorative plate to the Star Trek plate series.
And so were all those gouache and acrylic, or?
This is all acrylic. All the plates were done in straight acrylic.
And how large were they?
That diameter might have been about possibly around 15 inches diameter, 16 inches, something like that. This was a painting that I had done. I remember I was walking into a restaurant with Bob Rodriguez, who came to visit me when I was living in Novato, California. And while we were walking into the restaurant, I saw this vision in my head, pop into my head. And so all I had to do was copy what I had seen. And this was the first time I had won an award, a gold award at the Society of Illustrators for this painting called Moonlight. That was the name of the painting.
So you've said this to me a few times now about visions you've had about paintings.
Yeah.
You're the only person I know. I mean, I know a lot of artists. You're the only one I know that is like had visions of paintings that you've done.
Yeah.
And then you just recently told me, maybe last night, you had like 30 or so, like in your, like, that you haven't done yet.
Oh yeah, I was telling him I went a few years ago, I went on a 40-day, 40-night fast. And after the 40-day, 40-night fast, I received about 30 images that I still haven't even painted most of them yet, but I will be getting to them eventually.
Okay, so I have a good question from Paul. Thomas, your work, Thomas, your work is show-stopping. When you begin to lay in the pigment, which medium do you start with? Is it a thin gouache base and then acrylic, or vice versa?
It's gouache. It's a gouache base, and it's not necessarily thin either. What I do is I paint it on in the colors that I want it to be, and then I take a brush and some water and I pick out the light areas. So it's almost like what your father did with his technique with the kneaded eraser. I just do it with a brush.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then after you get to that stage, then you use the airbrush gouache airbrush and airbrush in the dark tones you want, all the tones you want. And after you get to that point, then you know you're done with the gouache and you fix it. And then from that point on, you paint the rest of the painting in acrylics and put all the detail in that way.
But you choose the gouache first because you can remove it.
Oh, yeah.
You can.
Yeah. You
Exactly.
manipulate it in
Yeah.
any way you need to. So
Right.
this is one of my favorite pieces. This is called Intimacy. This is when I was working for the Greenwich Workshop as one of their artists. And like I said, this has gold leaf and it's one of the decorative. I do three different styles: realistic, representational, stylized, and decorative. And decoratives are usually the ones that I have the gold leaf in it. And this is not this slide. I have another slide that shows it a little bit better because you can't really see the shine or the sheen of the gold leaf on this particular one. I'll get you that. And here's another decorative painting, which is one of my favorite decorative paintings. This is Beauty and the Beast. And like I said, it's one of my all-time favorites. It all worked out really well for me the way I wanted it to be. So yeah, that's.
I think this is a good time to mention this because you said something that I remember and close to me because you were talking about my father and something Mark taught you about taking something old and talk about that for a little
bit. I was telling John how his father gave me so much information about business, about being an artist, techniques. I learned so much from him. That man has so much talent. I mean, I always tell people he had more talent in his little finger than I had in my whole body. And we would ask him questions, me and another artist friend of mine, Ezra Tucker. We go out and have lunch with him and we'd ask him questions and he'd answer them. And I remember one time asking him, Mark, how do you, I asked him quite a few questions. One basically I was asking him because there was a lot of people who would imitate his style. And I said, does that ever get under your skin? Does that get on your nerves that people are always trying to copy what you do? And he said to me, well, not really. I said, well, why not? He said, well, it's the way I look at it. And he says, when you're an innovator, you are always growing and changing and improving. And you have people who admire you and follow you, but because you're the innovator, you keep moving forward, doing new stuff, and all they're doing is chasing you. And I never forgot that. I remember one time I asked him, Mark, how do you come up with a style or something or improve your look? I even asked him, how do you change your prices and stuff like that? When is a good time to get, a higher price for your work and stuff? He told me that one of the ways that you can improve what you're doing is if you want to come up with something different, he says, go back to the old masters or the people that you admire and look at what they've done. And then figure out what it is about what they've done that you admire or like, and try to incorporate that into what you do. Not only that, when you're looking at their artwork and you see what they like and you're trying to emulate the kind of things that they're doing, choose those elements that you admire and you just take something that's familiar and then you tweak it just a little bit. And in tweaking it, it makes it something different than what you were looking at. And that's how you grow as an illustrator. And I never forgot those things. Never forgot those things.
A couple quick questions here. Do you just use plain spray fixative?
Yes, a workable fixative. Yes.
Workable fixative?
Yes.
And then Ray Bonilla has been posting links, and he's just reminding everybody that your Beauty of the Beast piece is hanging at the Norman Rockwell.
That's
Museum
true.
right now.
Yes.
Okay, so for work that comes from visions, do you then sell / use them as illustrations, or do you consider them personal pieces?
Both. It just depends on what it is. Most of the pieces that have come to me that way have become fine art pieces for me. There's been a couple of times, like when I've prayed I've seen images while I was praying. I remember, I'll show you an image later on as we go through the slides. You'll see something, and then I'll remind you of what I saw when I saw that image and stuff during the time I was praying. But they come both ways, prayer and visions, and then sometimes, just walking down the street and getting inspiration like everybody else. So, that's the way they come. This was a piece that my friend Ezra Tucker, I was in his studio, and he had a card that he had posted on his bulletin board in his studio that said "Black Lion with Wings." And I said to him, I said, man, that is a cool concept. So I called Ezra up and I said, look, I saw this post you had on the card. I said, would you mind if I took that idea and did a painting of it? And he said, he gave me the permission to go ahead and do a painting of it. And so I did this painting, this painting's got a lot more to it than this. It's a longer painting. He's sitting on top of this mountain or this rock formation with a waterfall behind him. And it's a lot longer than what you're seeing. But anyway, so
Yeah, it's much more vertical.
yeah,
This is at the top of the picture.
yeah, that's how this one came about. And the name of the painting is called The Witness. And it's a painting about the power of God and the mystery and what God represents to me. That's what this painting is about. Not that he's a black lion, but anyways.
You don't know this. This is from my perspective. And I remember when I first saw this painting, I then put you from, like, all of a sudden you were with Mark and Bernie and all those guys.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I've heard that from other people, and I still to this day don't understand what is the big deal about this painting, but for some reason it's
stunning. And to see it in its vertical form, the tall, I mean, it's just an unbelievable composition. But I absolutely love this painting.
Thank you. Well, when I was doing the painting, I couldn't find a good photograph of a lion the way I needed it to be. So when that problem comes up, what I have to do is I have to sculpt my own character. And so that's what I did. I just sculpted the lion in the pose I needed him to be so that I could light it to get the lighting correct so I could paint from the photograph. And so this is the sculpture that I had done of the lion.
There's a question here from Addie Green. Hi, Thomas. I'm also in Colorado Springs. She's the award winner.
Okay.
She won the contest. And I'd love to see how much the West is part of the soul of your work. Do you find that your physical location is an important part of your ideation process?
I'm going to be honest with you. Not really. That's because I have the illustrator's background. I have learned how to tell stories visually throughout my career. So because of that, I don't get out much, and I don't go and see the beautiful scenery the way I would like to, because I'm so doggone busy. So basically what I do is I just get photographs and I piece them together to create what I want them to be. And that's how I do most of the work that I do. And we'll go through some of that in this talk too, as we get to the Western themes and stuff like that. I wish I had more time to enjoy my life. And that's what I'm working towards. Hopefully I'll be able to do more of that kind of thing. So
yeah, when we're 80, we'll be able to.
No, it's gonna be before then. So, and this was, believe it or not, this piece right here, this is called Night and Day. This was the first piece, the first time I got a vision. What happened was there was a show in San Francisco. They wanted me to put a painting in the show. I had never done a painting for a show. So I didn't know what to do. So I prayed. I went to God and I said, Lord, give me a painting that's got a good composition, beautiful color, a nice design. And a few weeks later, this image flashed in my mind and I saw the painting. And all I had to do was just copy what I saw. But this was the beginning. This changed the rest of my look. I did a series of sculptures called Ebony Visions. And this painting I did was the logo of my Ebony Vision figurine line. This is a newer piece. I did this last year. This is called, what is this? I can't believe my mind just went out on me. Let's see. Oh, Airman. Airman's Inspiration. That's the name of it. Airman's Inspiration. And if you notice, the hummingbird's got a red tail because the Tuskegee Airmen flew red tails. Yeah,
That was the name of their squad.
yeah.
Ray Bonilla posted the Black Lion, the full version of it, but it's really colorful.
Oh yeah,
You can kind of see it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't near that colorful, but a stunning image. I'm gonna have to call Tom out a little bit here because, and I've said this to him before, but I need to say it publicly in front of a lot of people. Him being an intern of my father's, and it just all kind of happened at the right age. Tom's about 5 or 6 years older than I am, and I decided I wanted to be an artist probably in my late teens.
Yeah.
And I started talking, to my dad about it. And Tom became the poster child of what I had to go through. And so every time I would do something, he was like, "You don't do that in years with us, Tom." Or it was always Tom this, Tom that, and you got to be better because you're never going to be able to compete with this guy because he's so good that, and so it's amazing. I like Tom actually, but you were that person to me. And really, I mean, I looked at what you did a lot more than you know that I did. And I saw what, you could see it in here. You could see him go from this, understanding, having great techniques, to developing a personal point of view, and then all of a sudden doing some of the best illustration work in the world. And I kind of watched it all unravel. And again, my dad was, he was such a nice, friendly guy to everybody, but he was my dad.
Yeah.
So he looked at it like, how dads are. And he looked at it like, no, you are different. I'm going to treat you a little bit differently. But he sure thought you were the most amazing talent.
Well,
Yeah.
First of all, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
I'm
I
sorry.
didn't know you
were
went
so
through.
good.
I didn't know you went through all that. I'm so sorry.
No, it was great. You got to have somebody, right?
But I can tell you, being his apprentice was really the highlight of my career. It really was. I mean, I never in a million years would have thought I would have had that experience.
Yeah, I know it because I did the same thing, and he knew a lot.
This piece here is called The Vessel, and it's one of the Christian images that I've done. This thing, this was one of those that I saw before I painted also. This piece is called Watchers in the Night, and it's one of the Christian images that I've done. A lot of these pieces are on display at the Biblical Museum in Dallas, Texas. This is all the time, or I've given them permission to use them right now. They don't own them, but I let them. Yeah. So this is called let's see. This is called Coat of Many Colors, Lord of All. That's the name of this painting.
How large is that painting?
This painting was about 4.5 feet tall, I believe, something like that.
You did a show in Kansas City. You weren't living there. You came back and did it. Dean Mitchell was involved.
Yeah.
And that was and you had a lot of really much larger scale things. It was the first time I saw large scale things from you.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because now, when I was doing those pieces then, I thought those were big paintings. Those are small now compared to what I'm doing now, so. But this is a piece that I had done on Obama before he had won the presidency his second term. But this was a prophetic painting only because like I said, this is before he won the election, but the two columns represent second term. And I put Abraham Lincoln Memorial on one side and Martin Luther King's memorial on the other side, statues. And I had no idea that when he was sworn in the second time, they used Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King's Bible that they swore him in on. I didn't know that. I just put those in there, and that's what happened.
Oh, wow.
And that blew me away. So this is probably the most recognizable painting that I've done of any of my work in the world. This is a Forgiven. And this painting I did something like 30 something years ago, but like I said, most people know me for this painting than anything else I've done. And this painting also, I saw before I painted it. They did a sculpture of it when I was doing figurines. Now here's the King Kong model you were talking about. I already told you I wanted to work for George Lucas and Phil Tippett, and so I did some models and stuff, and this is the kind of stuff I was showing Phil Tippett when I wanted to work for him. So I'm going to do another King Kong model eventually. So, because I go ape over Kong.
When you're not bad.
This is a series of clowns I did for Hallmark. Innocent Wonders is the name of it. Unfortunately, it didn't do well.
You did this long after you were at Hallmark.
Oh, long after. I was only at Hallmark for 1 year.
And so getting into like a complete, how did you figure that out? How did you get into the three-dimensional figurine?
Oh, I always knew I wanted to do that. Like I said, that's why I wanted to work for Lucasfilms, doing that for special effects. So it's something I always did on the side. I started when I was 12 years old, doing sculptures and stuff. And I taught myself. But these are some children clowns that I had done. And I did all of these, and I had a woman sew the costumes for me, but I sculpted all of these. This was a sculpture I had done as a Christmas present when I was married for my wife. And this was my son when he was 10 years old. We had gone to Comic-Con that same year. So I did a little figurine of him wearing a Flash shirt because we dressed him up as Kid Flash. And so I had somebody sew the clothing for me and stuff, but
So that was like 2010, 2009.
Yeah, that was around.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
Had 3 years in a row. We did a booth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Now I also, like I said, because I wanted to get into special effects, I also did some mutant makeup. There's here in Colorado Springs, there was this big play they used to put on at one of the mega churches called The Thorn. And I became the makeup guy for The Thorn. And so this was I didn't do his body. I didn't do the makeup for his body, but I did the makeup for his face. And these are all foam rubber latex masks, the prosthetics that I would put on him and stuff. So. This is one of my King Kong sculptures for a painting I was going to do of King Kong. Actually, I haven't done it yet, but I will. Okay, here's Ebony Visions. This is the line of figurines that changed my life. I was an illustrator, got into the collectible industry. I was doing plates, got known for doing the plates, but one of the women who had done a line of figurines for the collectible industry asked me if I would consider doing a black figurine line. She said, I think if you did that, it would be very popular. I said, no, I'm not interested in doing anything like that. But she put that seed in my mind and I never forgot it. And eventually when I got the opportunity and somebody wanted me to do a series of black figurines, I came up with a line called Ebony Visions, and these are some of the figurines. A student of mine, when I was an illustration teacher at the San Francisco Academy of Art College, he was in my illustration class, but he was an incredible sculptor. We became friends, and we ended up working for the same company. And I I did this figurine line, and he did all the sculpting on the line. I did a few images myself, a handful, but most of the figurines were sculpted by him. What happened was the company came to me and said, Thomas, why don't you just consider designing the figurines, because they're selling so quickly. And if you designed them and sculpted them, we would be behind. So why don't you just design them and let Mark sculpt them? And so we became a team. And after they put out the first original units, the first original figurines, 6 of them, after 2 months, it made the company their first $1 million. So it was very successful. It became the #1 selling Black figurine line in the nation for almost 21, 22 years.
Wow. So it changed your life
Yeah, surpassed anything I had ever done, period. Now I sculpted this piece right here. This was called the Protector. And then Mark did this one. This was Madonna. And then this was called the Music Maker. And then Mark sculpted the body on this, and I sculpted the head. This is called the Prayer.
Okay, so question, explain the figurine process. How were the figures done? Did you do them in clay? How did you sculpt?
What happened was I get the idea, then I set up a model and I take photographs. And then I take the photographs of the model in the round. And then after I did that, I would do, a color rough to show what colors the figurine would be. Then I'd send all the photographs in my drawings to Mark, my sculptor, and it was in the round, so he would sculpt it. And then after he was sculpted, then they would do the painting on it. After they would send it over and get a white body, they send a white body back, and then we do a painting on top of it. And then send it to China to have them produced and manufactured. And that was the process. It took about, for each figurine, it took about 3 months, about 3 to 4 months to start from the drawing to the finished figurine.
So Mark Newman was the.
Mark Newman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ray Bonilla is on top of everything. He's put a post of Mark Newman.
Yeah.
Link to it.
Yeah, Mark is an incredible sculptor.
They're talking about Dean Mitchell in here also.
Yeah.
Dean's a really great painter.
Oh yeah, Dean is an amazing painter. So
yeah. Okay. Why were you originally not interested in making Black figurines?
well, what was happening was it wasn't that I wasn't interested. It was just that the concept of doing a figurine, I was known as a plate artist and I was making good money. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know what kind of money you could make after you're doing the figurines because I was really upset when I found out that they wanted Mark to sculpt them, because I was like, wait a minute, my name is on it. And I feel weird about somebody else doing the artwork, the sculpting, if I'm doing the artwork and designing them. But after I got my first royalty check, that didn't bother me anymore. So
it wasn't about the fact that
it
Black.
It wasn't that at all. It was just that because I was already a known plate artist, I just wasn't thinking about doing something beyond plates. But like I said, that seed that she planted in my brain, I never forgot it. Then what happened was when James Gurney came out with Dinotopia, and I saw the success that he had from Dinotopia, and I love the concept he came up with this island where these dinosaurs live with humans and they work together and live together in the whole bit. I said, that's an incredible concept that he came up with. I said, man, I'd like to do something like that. So when I had the opportunity, I used that concept of an island of people who were artists, musicians, scientists, and they were inventors. They wore clothing from all over the world. And the only thing about them was they were all Black. And that's how I came up with Ebony Visions. So, but like I said, I got that idea from looking at what James Gurney had done. So, and then that's when Ebony Visions took off. So.
To Mr. Gurney.
And this particular piece right here is called The Guardian. that piece was probably the #1 selling figurine. I mean, they made more of that unit of figurines than any other figurine they had done. I think this one had about 22,000 units of figurines. Wow. For that particular one. This lady right here was in line waiting for me to sign her figurine, and she kept yelling, "I'm coming to see you, honey. I'm going to be there in a minute, baby." She scared the heck out of me. And she finally came up and sat down, and she said, "Here I am, honey. I love you, Thomas. I love you. You need to do a figurine of me." And I was like, "Yeah, right." And then I thought about it. I said, "Wait a minute, maybe I should." And so I did. And I did her figurine, and she was thrilled. And I called it Big Sexy.
That's awesome.
Now, this was a piece I really enjoyed. This was the Black Knight or the Dark Knight. I forget which one it is. And I thought it was a really cool concept. This one was a piece called Stepping Out. And then Obama, that he was a huge success. That was another, next to The Guardian, this was the #1 seller. I don't know, maybe he even surpassed the sales of The Guardian, because this was a hugely popular figurine. Because first of all, it was a historical figurine, and we've never had a Black president. So this is a piece that I had done as a demonstration. I started the painting in a monochromatic gray tone, black and white tonal painting. And then after it dried, I glazed color on top of it.
And let's talk about that, because I think that's going to be what you're going to be doing here.
That's what I'll be doing, yes.
You'll do a monochromatic painting.
Yes.
One evening.
Yes.
And on the third evening, and then the last evening, you'll be adding the glazes and color.
That's right.
And
That's
then
what I'll do.
next week, we'll be doing a process talk.
Yeah.
Which hopefully we'll talk a lot about the challenge too. Talk about what you went through with the bringing the monsters, and it relates to what your demos are.
Sure.
I'm trying to get a lot of people involved in the challenge. I think
Okay.
it's a perfect month. It's Halloween. We're doing monsters.
Yeah.
And it's going to tie into your painting process.
Yeah. Now, this was when I was with the Greenwich Workshop. I started working on an idea called a common thread. And this, what you're seeing here, is the actual first washes. A lot of times in the past, I would do paintings where I would do all the color washes to establish the color on the canvas. After you prime the canvas, then you do the washes in acrylics. And so what you're seeing is the drawing on the canvas with the acrylic washes on top of it. The name of the painting is called A Common Thread. Well, okay, we'll get back to that. So this is a piece I did called The Watcher. And this is one of my more successful images, or Christian images, that I put out. And it's a lot bigger than this. The wing goes, it's a vertical format, and the wing goes straight up.
I would have had the whole piece on here, but it was so unsquare. You were probably shooting it to get the glare off.
Yeah,
it was
probably.
very unsquare.
Yeah. This is another piece I did, and it's bigger than this also. It's called For You. This is a piece I called Bright Morning Star.
Okay, how was that one done?
This is oil on canvas. Only problem was I never really finished this painting. What happened was this: there was a show going on, and I promised to put paintings in the show. But at the time that they came back to me, I forgot I was supposed to do it. The show was in another 2 weeks. And they said, "Well, Thomas, do you have the paintings ready? We need to hang them." And I said, "What paintings?" And they said, I was like, oh my goodness. I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll get them done." I did 3 paintings in 10 days. I have never done that. And there was only one painting I took all the way to finish, but they were all done enough to put a frame on. So that's what I did with this one. This is one, I put a frame on, but it's still not what it should have been. So this is a piece I did called Universal Lord, I Hold the Key. tried to do a painting of Jesus where you really couldn't tell what race he was.
So I'm going to read something to you, Tom.
Mhm.
This is Julian. I have to say that I'm really elated and filled with pride knowing that Mr. Blackshear is doing a lot to portray Black life and Black people in such beautiful, positive way. We need that right now. That's a nice.
Yeah,
thank you.
that's
Julian.
nice. Yeah. So thank you. This piece is called, now this was the other piece. This is called Preparing to Sound the Alarm. Now this is the only painting in that series where I finished the painting.
So that's oil on canvas.
That's oil on canvas.
Do
Yeah.
you do, I mean, do you do straight up oil? Do you do any underpainting underneath it?
This was the whole process where you do the underpainting in acrylics.
Right.
But this is what's happened to me. I don't know if any of you all have had this problem, but this is a problem I'm dealing with. And I have to really be careful right now. Something has happened to the chemical composition of the gesso that I've used, the acrylic gesso, and it doesn't seem to matter what brand it is. But in the past, I would say at least about 12 years ago, when I would use acrylic gesso on canvas to prime it, and then I would put the acrylics on there, I do that and I put the painting on in oil, no problem. Now, when I do an acrylic painting on top of gessoed canvas, and I paint oil on top of the acrylics, I can take my hand and scratch down the painting and the painting will peel off.
Wow.
And this has happened to me many times. That's why I know something has happened in the chemical composition of the gesso or something, because that did not used to happen. So now I have to rethink how I do it. And a lot of times I just have to go ahead and do the painting in oil washes and take the time for it to dry and all that
Right.
stuff. The only reason why I did it in acrylic because it sped up the drying.
You think it's the gesso.
Yeah.
And so it's not the acrylic that's changed. I mean, the acrylic's not going to scrape off.
No,
It should be really durable.
I never thought about it as the acrylic. All I'm thinking about is the fact that for whatever reason, the oil painting is not adhering to that acrylic.
Right.
And when that wet acrylic touches that gesso, something is happening to keep that oil from binding to the acrylic the way it used to. I still don't know what I've called companies and you know, tried to see if they can help me figure it out. They really didn't even know what was going on. So I'm thinking it might have something to do with us being here in Colorado and the climate, the dry climate here.
Do you know Gary Armano? Gary Armano is San Francisco.
That sounds very familiar.
Very good artist. Yeah. Do you know, does that happen when the gesso on wood or panel too, or is it just a problem on canvas?
I have no idea. I just know that I've been experiencing it
With
experience on canvas. Yeah. This is a piece that I had done for Pope John Paul. I had a show at the Pilgrim's Home, the Pope John Paul's Pilgrim's Home in Rome. They invited me to have a show there on his 25th anniversary. It would have been a show at the Vatican, but at that time, I forgot the Pope at the time, but he had made a comment and had made a lot of Muslims very angry, and they got scared to have the show, or they thought it was not a good idea to have the show at the Vatican. So we had it at this anniversary thing with the Pilgrim's Home. And so I showed this piece there at the Vatican, and they seemed to be real thrilled about this piece I had done of John Paul right after he passed away.
And for every reason they should be. A beautiful painting.
Thank you.
You have a close-up of that one too.
Yeah, there it is.
Which is more accurate with color?
This one.
That's, man,
Oh,
gorgeous. So same thing, finished in oil.
yeah, finished in oil.
How big is it?
This is a big piece. This piece is almost 5 foot.
Wow.
So, yeah. Now we're going back to the washes of a common thread. And this is a whole piece together. The concept is a golden thread comes down from heaven, makes a design on the African man, and jumps on the Asian woman and makes a Oriental design, and then Celtic design on the white woman, goes back up to the Native American, makes a design on him, goes back up to the African, and goes back up to heaven. And they're all holding a candle that represents the spirit of God in their life. And this is the finished painting.
I assume that's a big painting also.
Well, the painting was in the studio. We could
Oh, yeah, we just,
we could have walked in. Yeah, it's a good size painting. I'd say about 3.5 feet tall, maybe.
I will show photos of Tom's studio during the next presentation. He is a connoisseur of books.
Best investment I ever made, buddy.
Books ever, and then some. There's some books in there that, man, I wish I had. There's some really amazing books in there. And then there's a lot of work up all over the place. I did manage to walk out of there just with one piece, one original.
Now, this piece right here is a piece that I've been wanting to paint for many, many years. And now I'm getting ready to start the painting on this one. This is called No Man Knows the Hour. This is one of the images that I got after I went on that 40-day, 40-night fast.
Okay, so Lisa Sears asking a question.
Yes.
I'm wondering if this is using airbrush acrylic paints. Are you still using airbrush?
Every once in a while, not too often. I don't do many illustrations right now, but I use acrylic paint right out of the tube. I don't use the airbrush acrylic paints that you can buy.
That have because they have like a shellac in them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's
no.
what she's.
No, I use the Liquitex tubes, and I just put it in the cup, and I put water in there and stir it up until it's
Did you learn that from my dad? He did that.
Yeah, he did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And then you throw the airbrush out.
Well,
because
no,
you couldn't clean it.
I clean mine. I learned how to clean mine.
You go out and buy the airbrush.
Yeah, well, Mark could do that. So this is a piece called Behold, and these are old pieces. I did these ideas almost 12 to 15 years ago, and eventually I will be painting these things.
That's kind of funny. I'll take the time to tell this because we're going to have time. So he did one of his Time magazine covers and he mentioned, they always mentioned his name and a little bit of blurb. This was 40 years ago, about the artist on the inside of the cover.
Yeah.
And they said what medium, and he put airbrush down. And so all the Pache, the airbrush companies started sending him, just like send him airbrushes, and they sent him all these airbrushes, and they asked him which one he liked the most. There was only one he could figure out how to use. It was the most simple, that little Badger, super simple airbrush. And thankfully it was inexpensive because he could never he'd take them apart to clean them and he could never get them back together.
I'm glad I went through what I needed because it saved a lot of money. But yeah, this is the painting called Dance of the Wind and Storm that I did years ago. And some of you might know that it was the one that's on the cover of the new Killers album. They asked me if I wouldn't mind letting them use my image on their album. And then after I did, they said, we've got about 5 singles and we're thinking we might want your artwork on the singles too. So they used 5 more images of mine for their singles.
That is so cool.
I didn't even know who the Killers were until they contacted me. And then when I found out they were, the world's biggest band last year, I'm like, whoa, okay. Thank you, Jesus. So now this piece here was a piece I had done for the Archery Museum show last year. And the Killers, we were in negotiation to do the album, and they had seen this image at the Gene Archery Museum show. So they asked me, can we use that as one of the singles? And this is one that they did use. And I just sold this piece a few months ago at an auction, a Coeur d'Alene art auction. And it was the first time I personally put a piece in the auction, and it sold there. So
it's a beautiful painting. How large is that?
I would say that's about 30, possibly around 36 inches, maybe 40 inches, 36 to 40 inches long. So
okay, so same technique, same.
Oil, yeah, just oil.
All oil, all the way
oil,
through?
Yeah.
Does that become the standard?
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm doing gallery work,
Yeah.
yeah, everything's in oil now.
Yeah, you
so.
don't want the paintings, I saw some of the prices on those things. You don't want the paint falling off.
No, you gotta be very careful. This is one of my favorite Western painters. Now, okay, partners, what we're gonna do is kind of take you through the new trail I'm on now. This is the Western paintings. This way back when I was trying to chase them jackrabbits back there and stuff. But yeah, I ran into this fella when I was hunting, and I kind of ran into him, and I kind of backed up. But anyway, this is one of my favorite paintings.
I can see you. That's something you do by yourself in the studio. That's a studio dialect. I got to entertain. You got to entertain yourself while you're rendering.
There you go. Yeah.
While you're rendering, you can fill in.
I'm one of those people that when I do animals, I make the sounds of the animals while I'm drawing. But no, this is one of my favorite pieces. This is called "There Once Was a Time."
Okay, so we're gonna pause here. We're gonna talk about this a little bit because your new path, your new journey, with the Western world, and I want you to explain that a little bit. I want you to explain kind of what's happened to you, how it happened, how. I mean, obviously, different mindset, and a different business too.
Yeah.
It's different than it's different than the gallery world that I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it has its own, it's kind of insular, the Western world. Can you talk about that to an extent?
Well, all these years, I've been looking at the Western artwork scene, mainly because one of my good friends became one of the top Western paintings in the nation quite a few years ago. His name is Morgan Weissman. After I saw his success, I would see him, and then I'd see other people that I knew, and they started doing Westerns. And I used to sit there and go, man, I think I could do that. I think I could get into doing Westerns.
When you said that, you're like, maybe like looking way back at like Howard Turpin and that group that was like super successful financially with it.
I knew a little bit about Howard Turpin because I met Howard Turpin when I was an illustrator at the Greenwich Workshop. I met Howard Turpin and Frank McCarthy and quite a few of the Jim Bama and all of the great Western painters.
Yeah.
And I said, even when I did the painting, did Swan Song come up yet? No, it didn't come up.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I did this painting for the Greenwich Workshop called Swan Song. That was one of my first big, I guess, Western images, and that will be coming up soon. Anyway, so I was trying to find myself at the time. Anyway, after I became a collectible artist, and I started doing Ebony Visions, that's one of the reasons why people didn't see me doing any more illustration for a while, because Ebony Visions, when it took off, like I said, it was the #1 selling Black figurine in the nation for 20 years. So that's all I was doing. And I would still be doing it if things hadn't gotten goofy. What happened was the company that I worked for, or who bought the rights to the figurine line, Lennox, the plate company, they sued me. My contract came to an end. I decided not to renew it for various reasons, which I had the right to do it because I had fulfilled the contract. And they got really mad at me because I was making so much money for them that I was no longer going to do it no more. So they got real mad at me. And so because they got mad at me, they came up with a bogus way to sue me. And they put me through hell for 4 years and did some really dirty stuff. And so I wasn't doing the figurine line at the time. At the same time that happened, I was going through a very, very bad divorce. The divorce lasted for 3.5 years. And I lost everything. And so basically, after it was all over and the dust cleared, I didn't have a job and I didn't have a way of supporting myself. So I started doing art classes in my studio, and I would do it 1 day a week, and I was only making $150 to $200 a week. That was it. I was really blessed though, because even if that's all I was making, God was still supporting me in a way that for the next 3 years, I would still be able to take care of my debt. It was miraculous the way it all happened. Anyway, I was at the lowest point in my life. I've never gone through nothing like that. But anyway, I get a call from my buddy Morgan. I hadn't talked to him in many years. He said, Thomas, he called me. We talked January 1st, 2016, the first day of January 2016 of the brand new year. He said, there's a shift going on in the art market, the Western art market. And you know, I've been following your work for many years, and you know, I love your work. And I just think you could be an incredible addition to the Western art market. Would you consider doing some artwork for this? Because if you did, I would do all I could to introduce you to people, try to get you in shows, get you in museums, help you with your website, whatever you need to be successful in the Western art market, I'm willing to do for you. And I said, Morgan, man, that's really generous of you. I really appreciate it. What do you want me to do? He said, I want you to paint. And I'll just keep checking on you throughout the year. And then when the year is over with, next year, when I go to the Gene Autry Museum show, I want to invite you as a guest so I can introduce you to people so they can know who you are. So I want you to put a portfolio together. I said, fine, I'll do it. So that's what I did. So what happened was I created a small portfolio of work, some pieces I was still working on. We went to the show. I went to the show as his guest. He introduced me to various people and walked out of there with a gallery, which would happen to be one of the top Western galleries in the nation, run by a woman named Mary Von Leshy. And everybody knew her. Everybody in the Western art market knew her. But she saw my work. We had a talk for 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, she looked at me. She said, okay, Thomas, I want you in my gallery. And I was like, okay. And that's how it all started. I was starting over. I never thought at the time I was around 62 or 63 years old. And I never thought I would be starting over at that age, but that's what's happening. And since then, I've just been very blessed. I've only been doing it for 4 years, but I mean, the paintings have taken off. I've got 6 paintings now in 5 different museums. I've got galleries at me and collectors who want my work now. I'm just very thankful. And that's how I've started doing this now. In trying to decide what I was going to do, I said, okay, what am I going to do now? I mean, come on. This is the Western market. There's only so much you can do. I mean, cowboys, Indians, cows, terrain, mountains, horses. You know, after that, cactus. I mean, after that, what do you do? I said, so how do I stand out? How do I stand out from everybody else who's been doing it for years? And I'm just starting out. So I said, well, a lot of people like Maynard Dixon, and I like Maynard Dixon. He's an amazing artist. But what Maynard Dixon did was he took the style of Art Deco and combined it with the Western theme. And I said, now there's a lot of artists who really admire him and follow that look. And I said, I've never seen anybody take Art Nouveau and combine it with the Western theme. So that's what I did. I took Art Nouveau and combined it with the Western theme, and I call it Western Nouveau. And it's taken off. And people seem to like that style I'm doing. And I started doing more Indians because, you know, I thought I could do more with Indians than I did with the cowboys because of the spirituality and nature and all of the different costumings and things that they have. And so that's why I gravitated more to the Indians. And then, of course, I started doing some Black cowboys. Well, that really did a number because you don't see a lot of Black cowboys in Western museums. And so that just started taking off like nobody's business. So that's how I got into the market. I like trying to do something different, just like what Mark told me. Take something familiar and just tweak it just a little bit so that it becomes something new. And that's what I've been trying to do. So I'm just very excited, and I'm excited that people seem to like the new images that I've been doing. So that's how I started doing that.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And I'll ask you more questions about your, what was who was the artist you mentioned?
Morgan Weinstein.
Morgan, yeah.
Yeah.
The introduction with one gallery kind of set everything in motion.
Yeah. Because what happened was I did one painting, and I think we'll go through some of these paintings. I don't know if you have that particular image on there, but I'll explain it as I go along. This particular piece was done last year for the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce. They do select an artist to do a painting for their town every year. And last year was the year that I did this for them. And this is a color rough of a piece I did called Crow. And that's what I do. I do these color roughs, gouache. This piece here is called Bronco Break. That was the name of this piece. So.
And so, large?
Yeah, this is a large.
Is that, and do you think about that, like when you're doing a body of work for a gallery? Or number one, I would guess they're asking for large paintings.
Well, yeah, they would like to have, I mean, medium-sized to large paintings and stuff. And, you know, my reason for doing it was, at the time, I needed as much money coming in as possible. the larger the painting, the more money you can make off of it. So that's what the reason I went with that.
Did you, and I know you're doing a whole series of smaller pieces right now for your show that we're having down in Sarasota.
Yeah.
Do you think about that? I mean, are you thinking about that? Okay, I have to do this body of work because, again, different people, more people can afford, or a variety of, if you have a variety of sizes, more people can afford to buy, you know, some that can't afford to buy a big painting and buy a small painting.
That's exactly why at this show, I'm having a show at the Ringling School of Art next year. And so I just decided, because of who might be seeing the show, coming to the show, to get more affordable pieces. Not only that, if I did smaller pieces, I can get them a lot done a lot quicker that way. So that's why I've done what I'm doing with that.
I think it's the Selby Gallery, right? That's what the Selby Museum, Selby Gallery, Ringling College of Art.
I'm still learning.
Yeah,
So,
that's what it is.
So yeah. These are just some sketches. This was a sketch that I did for Native American Nouveau. Now, this particular image, one day when I was in prayer, I saw this painting before I painted it. This is the color rough. And that's the painting. This is one of my favorite paintings. As a matter of fact, as far as the theme of the name of the painting is called Native American Nouveau. With this new caption that I've put on these paintings, Western Nouveau, to me, this is the piece that illustrates Western Nouveau to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So big painting?
Yes, this is a big painting.
Okay, so is that kind of the traditional steps you go through everything? I know you're going to talk about that next week, but do you always do a color study?
Oh yeah. I can't even touch the canvas for a final painting until that color study is done. I will not touch. No way. One of the reasons why I've gotten to that point is because I don't have the time to be working on a painting and not know what to do with it, run into a problem and not know how to handle it, and then have to throw the painting away. I do not have that kind of time. Once I do a color up, that painting will be finished. And I know that. So
you want to know exactly where you're going.
And sometimes I deviate from what the color rough, but the color rough is more of a guide, because sometimes I can enhance it and make it better. But most of the time I stick with what I've done, unless I think I can push it a little bit better. And so.
And then I know I asked you this question earlier today. Thomas opened up like folders. I don't know if they were in boxes or whatever, but he just started throwing drawings at me, and photos.
Well, I wasn't throwing them at his face.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Not yet.
Turned them into little planes.
But he just started opening up these. He had them very organized, at least when we started.
Yeah.
But he had, I mean, so many different versions of the drawings, which we'll take a look at next week. Hopefully, we'll see lots of different versions. But I asked, and I kind of knew the question because and you may have learned that from my father, or just part of being an illustrator of that genre of, using tracing paper, working on layout paper. But I asked him if he carried a sketchbook. Didn't answer.
And my answer was no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just got in the habit a lot of times of just doing the drawings on scrap pieces of paper. I don't know why. I guess because now it's more important to me to finish the painting than it is the drawing. But I learned something a couple of years ago. A lot of collectors want those drawings. So now I've started doing them on nice paper and on vellum. And they're very nice and they don't get wrinkled and no paint on top of them or anything like that. I didn't blow my nose on it. They're nice pieces of paper. So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, I think it's interesting because obviously you draw all the time. You're a great drawer. You draw all the time. You got great facility. Tom has, when you're looking at these things, it's like, okay, this is why Photoshop was made. Is for somebody, it's that same process. You're creating, just as the illustrators that came before us used tracing paper and layers and would stack, draw things in different sizes and put tracing tissue on top of tissues and because you can see it.
Yeah, you can see,
and it's all about your composing. And Ray, I know he's been posting. Ray Bonilla has been posting stuff in here the whole talk. Thank you very much for bringing all those links up. But Ray uses that same mindset, but does, he starts with Photoshop, starts with photography, then works on things in Photoshop, and then the drawing starts after that. But all of the like Frankenstein drawings that you were showing me of cut out like photography, like he would have a piece of photograph, and then he would cut out a drawing and paste on top of the photograph, and then paste on, two or three other things going on in it. So it was like, again, it was all Frankenstein together, but that's something that, my dad never drew a sketchbook either. And he said he wanted everything accessible because it was all part of the process, the drawing. And he wanted to be able to use it. And he did. And he, cut things up and glued things down. And it was really cool seeing it. And you're going to see some of that next week. And I think it's fun to bring up.
Yeah, I'm a dinosaur. It's like I'm still working my way into the 21st century. And I would love to know how to do, what is it? Photoshop.
Yep.
I've never had nobody to teach me. To me, one of the dumbest things that ever happened with the computer was when they started selling those things all those years ago. There was not a handbook or directions with it. And to me, that's always blown my mind. It's like
there were, it's just, we couldn't figure them out.
Well, whatever. The fact of the matter, for normal people like me, I say, hey, I forget that. I'll just do what I know to do. And that's what I do. And I'm very comfortable with it. I mean, I am always blown away and amazed by the people who use the computer. And I've always said, the people who will rule the industry are the ones who can do the computer and do it by hand. I really believe that.
Well, I think that because it becomes part of the drawing process.
Yes. Yeah.
The design, the whole thing is part of the process. There's the piece.
Yeah. This is Swan Song. This is the painting that I did when I was at the Greenwich workshop. And this is the painting that sold last year at an auction and created a little record there. Unfortunately, it wasn't my painting. So
it was a resale.
It was a resale, but still it was nice that people wanted the painting. So that's cool.
Well, it's great because it's establishing price.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew that was going to happen as soon as we said that. Thomas, I'll trade Photoshop lessons for oil painting lessons. I live in the Springs.
Oh.
I knew you were going to start getting offers.
Well, in that case, just tell them to come on over to the studio. And my classes are on Wednesday nights. I'll give Mark my number. You can give me a call and we'll set it up.
Okay.
This is one of the few paintings that I have in the gallery right now. It's one of the oldest paintings that I have in the gallery that still hasn't sold. I did this painting at least 3-4 years ago. and it still hasn't sold. This is called Top Hat, and it's done in acrylics. So it's a big painting too, so about 5 feet tall. This is the painting that I did. Unfortunately, I wish we had a better photograph of this one. This is the painting I did for the Gene Autry Museum show 2 years ago, and I think it won the museum bought the painting, so it won the biggest award in the show that year. And I was very shocked and happy that that happened, because I had only been doing it it was my 2nd year in the show. But what was interesting about it was I had the show in 2000, let's see, was it 2017, or I think my first show was in 2000. No, my first show was in 2018. In 2019 was when I had this painting in the show. And the previous year, 2018, I had done another painting of a black cowboy standing up against a wall with some posters on it. And the only reason why I had done that painting was because this was the painting I wanted to do. But as I was working on the painting, I realized I wasn't going to have the time to finish it in time for the show. So I just changed the format a little bit and did a smaller version of this. And then that's what I put in the show. So.
Great piece.
Thank you. It's called Wild West Show. So, oh, there's the painting. That was the first year. That was the one that I did, and I got a Artist Choice Award for that painting.
So what made this one so much easier than the other? Just less complicated?
Oh yeah, because there was a lot more to do, like the buffalo and all that. So it was just one figure. I didn't have to worry about the background behind the wall and all that stuff. So, and I cut them off at the waist. So it just made it a little easier. I mean, this took some doing. And like I said, what was so weird to me about this painting, I hate doing lettering. But when I'm working on a painting, I will do what it takes to make that painting as successful as I feel it needs to be. So I'll go ahead and bite the bullet and do it.
You did all the lettering and oil?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I did.
Wow. I hope it was pretty good size.
Oh yeah, it was good size. Now, this piece here is called Cowboy Classic. This photograph is not the best. And this painting is a pretty simple painting, and so a museum bought this piece. But it was a big painting. This painting was, I think, a little bit over 50 inches by 50 inches. I think it was something like that.
It's unusual to have the feet on the bottom of the picture point. That doesn't,
well, the truth is there's another part to it.
Okay.
And it's a black platform he's standing on, so you
okay.
can't see that now. So yeah. But anyway.
It works like that though.
Yeah.
It's hard to make that work.
Yeah. Now, one thing I've come to understand is if you can really learn how to develop your design sense, you can get away with a lot of stuff that most people wouldn't even think about, because it's all based on design. And I learned that from your father. I mean, that man, my biggest regret in art school was I did not take a design class. And so when I met Mark, and Mark always said he doesn't draw well. He says, I'm a designer. That's what I do. I design. And I really learned how to become a designer after being with Mark. And then, of course, when he showed me, because I remember the question, I said, Mark, how do you get these ideas to do this stuff in the background, these designs you do? And he threw a book on my lap, and it was Gustav Klimt. And I had never even seen Gustav Klimt before. And he said, I use this guy a lot. I look at him a lot. And I looked at Gustav Klimt and I said to myself, what does he see in this guy? and so I'm just going through the book. And then I said, well, he must see something. So I just started studying it. And I kept studying and studying. And then I just started falling in love with Gustav Klimt. And now I have more books on Gustav Klimt and Alphonse Mucha than any books in my library.
That's interesting. I've run into that with art students in the past where they don't like what you put in front of them, or they don't understand what you put in front of them. And I always, I try to turn it away. If Gary Kelly handed me somebody and said, look at this, you should look at this, there's a lot to be learned here.
Yeah.
Because it was Gary Kelly,
Yeah.
I would look at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody should try to be as open as possible to new things, especially when someone like if Thomas tells you to look at somebody, look at it.
Well, like I said, learning about design. So anyway, after meeting Mark, I studied design and I learned to become a designer on my own because of my association with Mark. And now today, I guess you could say that it's a part of what I do now because it's kind of like it's just in there. Yeah. You know, and so I'm glad I went ahead and did that, even though I didn't learn it in school.
Even towards the end of his life, he would always say, well, he wouldn't say he didn't draw well.
Well, that's what he told me. That's what he said.
But he wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
He would say, I consider myself a designer who paints.
I've heard that.
I'm more about being a designer than anything else. And that's the way he saw picture painting.
He did tell me, I'm not that good of a drawer. I don't draw that well. I said,
figured it out.
I said, you sure are fooling me. So, yeah.
Yeah, he fooled everybody.
Yeah. This is a newer piece. This is called Thunderbird. And this was, I got a chance to be at the Prix de West show. My first time in the Prix de West show this year. And this was the painting. And then this other painting you'll see were the pieces I did. So I was very excited to get in. And I like this idea of Thunderbird. So this is an old piece. This is called Texas Chillin'. And this is one of my first paintings of a black cowboy that I had ever done.
Like how old?
This piece is about 15, 16
Really?
years old.
So you were doing before.
Yeah, these were the first pieces I did when I was during the time I was going through that 40-day, 40-night fast.
Yeah.
Right after that, I started doing paintings, and this was one of the ones that I did after that. So yeah.
Wow.
And this was in the show at the Booth Museum in Cartersville, Georgia. And this is the first, not this one, but the other painting, which is called Now What? That was the first painting a museum had bought from me. Oh, this was one of my favorite pieces. And the way I came up with the idea, it was just too cool. A lot of times when I'm working on trying to get ideas, what I'll do is I'll take photographs or images that I like, and I'll put them on, I'll copy them on acetate. And so I was looking at Maynard Dixon. I love Maynard Dixon, and one of my favorite paintings of his is a painting he did called Cloud World. And this is a part of that painting. It's a much longer than what you see here. I just took a section of it, but it's called Cloud World. So I duplicated part of Cloud World in this painting. The name of this painting is called Dixon Dream. And of course, this is the famous painting that your student won my demonstration last year from by understanding what the dream part was. But anyway, the way I got the design was this. I was on the telephone rang. And I was sitting there talking on the telephone, and I glanced over at a desk, and on the desk, there was a book open of Dixon Dream of Cloud World. And on top of the book or the photograph of Cloud World, I had a piece of acetate with the model on acetate on top of it. And I saw the clouds coming. I said, wow, that would be a good painting. And that's how I came up with the idea for Dixon Dream. So
that's one of my favorites.
And it was the third black cowboy I've ever painted. So, but I really, like I said, this is one of my favorite pieces.
I agree with you on that. It's stunning. How big was this piece?
This was about, I'd say something like 34 inches high, something like that. And maybe it might have been higher because I think the guy was life-size. So it might have been a little bit higher than that. So this was a piece that I did called Sacred Smoke, and this was more stylized.
Yep, somebody just posted.
Yeah.
The paint.
Yeah. And this was a big head I had done. This piece wasn't finished when you see what we see here wasn't completely done, but it gives you an idea what it was turning out to look like. And this was another stylized piece where I manipulated the features of the face to make them a little bit more graphic and stylized looking.
Right.
So, and I learned that from being around your father too. So, this was a piece I did called a Cowboy, and it was a small piece that I had in the Gene Autry Museum. This was done in acrylics, kind of done in a David Grove style, with a lot more detail than what he would usually. His stuff was a lot more flat and graphic than this.
You knew David, right?
Yeah, I
In
did.
San Francisco.
Yeah. This is a piece, another piece that I've done that it still hadn't sold yet. This is called Taking Flight. And people seem to really like it, but I'll be glad when it sells. So now this is now what? This is the first painting that a museum ever bought from me. And I like the design on that one and the composition. I think it all came together really well.
Was it done for a specific show?
It was done for that first show. What it was, that show at the Booth Museum in Cartersville, Georgia, was doing a show on the Black West. Nobody had ever done one like that. And so they had invited a lot of Black Western artists or Black artists to put a piece in the show. And so I put these two in it, and they bought that one painting.
That might be, and we had last year about this time we had Stephen Walker, and I think he said that was Dean Mitchell part of that.
Yeah, he didn't come to the show, but his stuff was in the show. This is another decorative painting with golden. This is called Golden Leaves. Now, this is one of my favorite stylized paintings. This is called Background Cactus. I just love the way the stylization on the face of this guy came out.
His face and the stylization of his breastplate,
Yeah,
all of it's really beautifully done.
thank you.
Again, that's I got such a kick out of seeing today the drawings and like different shaped scarves, different shape. I mean, really the hair and designing things in a different way.
Everything matters.
Yeah.
Everything matters.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, for whatever reason, they concentrate on one thing and they just let other things go. No, the whole thing as a composition has to work together. This is a piece I did called Blue Necktie. And I did your father's technique where he would do the drawing, pastel drawing on the vellum. Then he would put the oil on top of it, and then he would put it on top of a illustration board, and then he would smudge it around a little bit. He told me how to do it, but I never tried it. So I said, doggone it, I'm going to try this. And that's what came out.
Pretty good.
Thanks.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
Thank you.
And it does feel very different than some of the other things.
But yeah, it's more the Mark English oil wash technique on that one. This is a piece I did called Hummingbird. And
Wow.
I think it came out okay. There was something else I think I was looking for that it didn't quite capture, but I think it's okay. Most people seem to like it a lot. So
I like it a lot.
thank you.
Love the head.
Thanks.
Is it big?
Yeah, medium size. Medium size. Okay, that was a full image of the painting I did for the Jackson Hole Chamber of Commerce last year.
That's just stunning. That is just stunning. It's interesting because I look at a lot of stuff that I would see in Santa Fe, Scottsdale, the galleries there, and it fits, it checks all those boxes of being that Southwest genre, but looks completely different. The technique is very different. The the overall feel of it is very different. But I can see how people will go nuts for it.
Well, one thing that I'm utilizing is all the knowledge as an illustrator and all of the things that I drew from the designs and the different stylizations and stuff like that. I'm incorporating all that into what I'm doing now.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you. This is called Crow Crown. And this piece that we're looking at was not finished at the time, but anyway, that piece came out really nice. I think it worked real well.
So the American Indian paintings, a lot of that your photography or using found photography?
Believe it or not, this guy right here, this is the face from a sculpture.
Really?
Yeah, old sculpture. It was in an old book. And it was a profile, and I said, "Oh man, that's too nice." And so I just put flesh on them, and then I found a headdress. I saw a design from a book from one of the designers in Vienna whose stuff what was his name? Love his work. But anyway, he had this headdress with a chicken head on a woman with a wing coming out on the side. I said, wow, bringing the two together would really make this thing stand out. And that's how I created that.
That's beautiful.
Thanks. This is one of my favorite pieces. This is Brother Eagle. And I really like the way this one came out. I also like the fact that if you were to look closer at this piece, I stylized the eagle a little bit. His wings and part of the way I painted him is a little bit more stylized than real, but it all works. It just worked out really well. And I like mixing the two together sometimes here and there. And then look at the hair, the way it's blown and wind.
Right.
It's got that stylization too. And I had to remember trying to draw out every strand of hair to make sure the design was right on that thing. But I really like the way this one came out.
Man, that eagle looks like you could carry that guy off. Or at least his arm.
Yeah, yeah. And this guy's face this was not one Indian. I used a lot of profiles and I just kind of put them together to
It
make.
looks like the same profile as the one previous backwards.
No, it's completely
the same nose.
completely different. Well, I usually use a nose similar, but
It's beautiful
thank
piece.
you.
Love that simplification of the hair, that dark shape, design, really designed hair. Beautiful.
Now, this is one of my all-time favorites from all of the new Western pieces. This is called Buffalo Hunt. And I've just never seen anything like this before with the gold leaf. And I want to do more stuff like this because this stuff really, really excites the heck out of me because it's just fresh and different. And it was fun to do. A lot of work because I had to build up the main is a lot more three-dimensional.
Right.
And stuff, and you build that up with cardboard, and then you put the burnishing clay on top of it. Then you sand it down, and then you can put the gold leaf on top.
Wow.
So it's a whole process. It's a whole
Is
process.
it on masonite?
Yeah. Anytime I do a decorative painting with gold leaf on it, it has to be on a rigid surface.
Cardboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, the designing. I've seen gold leaf used, and it really I find distracting, but it's so much a part of the design, the value structure of the horse and everything. It works beautiful.
Yeah, this piece was 50 inches by 50 inches.
Wow. And
the first show I ever had,
that's a lot of gold leaf.
Well, I bought a lot of gold leaf, as a matter of fact, to be honest with you. But yeah, I remember I was so excited because it was my first show. I was doing a show with Mark Majori and Bonnie Morris at Trailside Galleries in Jackson Hole. And it was the first time I had done something like that. And this painting sold right away. I mean, a couple from California bought this painting over the telephone.
Wow.
So. Okay, this piece here is the piece that I had at the Gene Archer Museum this year. this won Artist Choice Award. And this is called The Wait. Now, this particular image was I went to a reenactment event for Buffalo Soldiers up in Denver. And I took photographs of this guy on this horse at least 12 years ago. And they've just been sitting there. And I said, doggone it, it's time for me to do something with this thing. And so that's how I did that.
When they do a reenactment, I guess you kind of like just give over the rights. I mean, you're doing that as a
they were very nice. They were very nice. I asked them, I said, well, how do I pay you guys? They said, just give us a donation. And that's all they asked for. You know, I said, okay.
Wow. Until this guy finds you, comes back and sues you.
Well, they did a movie called Buffalo Soldiers a few years ago.
Right.
That dude was in the movie.
Really?
Yeah, the same guy. Yeah.
Cool. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Question for Thomas. What is the average turnaround time for your Western paintings?
I don't know, about 10 months. I'm just joking. That's what it feels like. I'll be honest with you. A painting like this would take me, if I didn't have anything else to do, would take me about a month. But when you're working on 3 or 4 paintings at the same time, then, you know, it gets a little crazy. But, you know, something like this would be about a month. So,
Wow.
or month to a month and a week or so, something like that.
So, okay, so this just comes down to practical. Walking around your studio and you showing me those, you know, folders, and there's, you know, 30 drawings, 30 different drawings, and all the reference and everything that's connected, all that process work that you do. Do you do a number of those things and then paint? Like, you try to get the process work done first, then do a bunch of paintings, and so you're not bouncing back and forth with process, or you do one painting at a time?
Well, right now, what you saw is me spending all that time getting the concept and the drawings done.
Right.
Because
for how many paintings?
4.
Okay.
4 paintings. Because the point of the matter is, in November, I got to start painting.
Yeah.
But I can't paint until everything's worked out. So I'm doing all that now, so that by that time, now I can go ahead and get started because everything's worked out now.
Right.
So the next,
you like doing that with the group. You like,
well,
you're not bouncing back and forth.
well, it's like this. I don't like it, but I have to because I have no choice. You know, I've already committed to these shows and they're expecting such things, so I got to get it done. And so that's the best way to do it.
I always like doing that, like with the series of landscapes. I like doing a whole bunch of process work because you get into it.
Yeah.
You know, you're at the same place,
Yeah.
it's the same materials.
Yeah.
And then when you start painting, it's nice to know that, I could go for 10 or 12 paintings.
Oh, yeah.
And that I already have all the paintings solved.
Yeah. It's just that with these though, there's a lot of work that goes into creating the image, the idea.
Right.
And like I said, you know, going back and forth, working out because, you know, I just wanted to be the best it could possibly be. You know, and I got that out of being an illustrator. I used to feel unclean when I would do a painting and it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And so I just try to make sure it gets as close to what I'm hoping it could be as possible.
That's what Chris Payne refers to illustration as art done under the circumstances.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Now this is another one of my pieces that I thought was pretty successful. This was also in the Gene Autry Museum show this year. And this was called American Nobility, and all of the leaves in this painting are gold leafed. So this is another one of my decorative pieces. Not only that coin that he's wearing, I actually sculpted that coin. So I sculpted it, then I applied gold leaf to it.
Really?
Yeah.
And so again, on Masonite, just on a hard surface.
And then that was done with sculpting. Somebody asked me that question earlier about my figurines. Figurines were done in sculpting because I forgot to answer that question. Sculpting was what they done. You know what sculpting is? It's a plastic-based clay that you can bake in the oven at home, and that's where most of the figurines and most of the sculpture I do. That's how I do it. I make it and I bake it in the oven, and it becomes hard, and then I add to it and bake it again. It becomes hard, add to it, bake it again until you get what you want.
So when did you feel like you could, when did you feel like you had control? Like control of being really imaginative, like being able to distort faces and think, I know it's all, I know you're looking at something, you have references, I've seen all the references, but you take the references subservient to the whole picture. It's just there for the technical part. When did you feel like you had, the ability to just leave reality in the reference and just use it as just a tool?
Because of all of the studying I've done and the understanding that I have, the easiest thing for me to paint ever since I've been an artist has been the human form in the face. That's the easiest thing for me. I mean, no problem at all. Don't give me any cars or nothing like that, but the human face in structure. I understand structure. Do I know all of the anatomy and all the bones and stuff like that? No. But I know enough to make it look like I think I know what I'm doing. So, there's a lot that I've learned. I've learned how to fake a lot of stuff too. So I don't know everything, but I know enough to make something hopefully look good enough to make them believe it works, so I get a kick out of doing something that I know a lot of people would have a hard time trying to get done or saying you can't do that. I remember people used to say that when I was coming up as an artist. They used to always say to me, "Oh, you can't do that," or "That's not going to work." And I go, "Watch me." And but now I have enough understanding and enough knowledge under my belt that I can do whatever I want when I want now, if I choose to do it. So, am I good at everything? No. But I know that if I spent the time to really learn it, I could get better at it. So,
well, everything's linking together. It's like I can recognize, your paintings. And no, maybe you don't want me to say this, but your paintings relate back to what you were doing 25 years ago too. There's still there's pieces of you in it all the way through.
Well, but not just pieces of me, pieces of everybody else I've learned from too.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I guess I look at it as a toolbox, and now they have all become a part of my toolbox, and now it's become a part of me now. So it's even like this Art Nouveau thing. It's in there. It's like I've studied it so much that it's just in there now. And I like that because I like that period. I love Art Nouveau artwork. It's just beautiful to me. And the art, to me, the most beautiful jewelry that was done at that time, like jewelry from Lalique. All that stuff to me is the most beautiful jewelry I think I've ever seen. And you don't see stuff like, people don't do stuff like that anymore. And it's like, no, that was true craftsmanship. And I just want to continue to do beautiful artwork and just show people that if you study something enough and you really want something enough, you can do stuff that can really make people think and enjoy what you're doing. So,
well, I'm going to ask the audience, do you have any final questions? Maybe we could take one or two before we go. We're getting pretty close to the end here. I want to thank Tom for sharing all these beautiful images with us. There's a bunch of just great pictures in here, and they go a lot of different directions. But the one consistency is they were good all the way through. Absolutely gorgeous. So if anybody's got a question for us, we could leave that as the closing remarks or the last thing we talk about. Again, next week we'll be kind of discussing the process, and it's a process that relates to both what you did as an illustrator, and how you're approaching the current painting.
Same process, yeah.
Well, fantastic. I think we're there then. We don't have any questions. Tom did a beautiful job explaining, and the work is stunning. We're getting a whole bunch of thank yous, which is very, very cool. And I know there's a really interested audience in here tonight. Well, I think we're good. It's 7 o'clock. Tom, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this. I really look forward to next week. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great week.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Hey, if you're still interested for a mentorship class, we still have room in some of the classes. Think about it.